Alleluia, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia. You may be seated. Now, I am not a thrill seeker by nature, shocking to many of you, I know. But I have been on a few adventures in my life. So I've done some adventurous things. I've gone zip lining in Costa Rica, actually more than once, even though I'm afraid of heights. I've gone skydiving for my birthday, even though I'm afraid of heights. And yet, nothing compares to going shark diving in South Africa with great white sharks. At breakfast on the morning we were going to go do the dive, the thought of being in a cage underwater with great white sharks made me lose my appetite, which is rare in and of itself. And it's exactly as terrifying as it sounds. It's easily the scariest thing I've ever done in my life from a physical perspective. It only got worse out on the boat. A few miles offshore, they anchored and they bolted this narrow cage to the side of the boat. And then they began dumping chum into the water, a lovely mixture of fish heads and guts and blood that smelled just as good as you can think. And for the second time that day, my stomach did somersaults. In a wetsuit with 5 others, I dropped into the cage inside the cold water, my heart pounding out of my chest. You see, I imagined that sharks were like dogs when they attack, that they would be kind of ramming the cage, trying to get in. But as I put on my goggles and went down, everything was very murky. Shapes blurred in my periphery, and every shadow felt massive. The cage offers protection, yes, but it also kind of restricts your view. You can't quite see through the bars. And I kept worrying that my one foot was kind of dangling as like catnip for the shark to come have a bite. I knew I was safe, technically, but it didn't feel like safety in the least. Turns out that the sharks circled the boat, mostly uninterested. One shark did get kind of close to another group, thanks be to God. No violence, just sharks drawn by blood. That cage was meant to protect me, but it also kept me from seeing clearly, and it kept me from being really free. I think that might be how Mary Magdalene felt on that first Easter morning. She's not in a steel cage, but she is in a cage of grief. Her heart is locked in Good Friday. She comes to the tomb not expecting to find life because she's trapped in her own grief. Her eyes are clouded. Her world has narrowed to absence. She arrives early while it's still dark. And when she sees the stone rolled away, it's not a relief, it's another blow. She panics, assuming the worst. Someone has taken the body of Jesus, she thinks, and so off she runs to get others. Peter and the other disciple come to investigate, making their own discoveries while Mary waits in the background. Finally, alone again, she sees the angels who ask, "Why are you weeping?" Her tears are compounded because not only is Jesus dead, but now they've taken his body. There is much to weep about. Then someone speaks to her. She turns. He asks her why she's crying, and she assumes he's the gardener. Maybe he was. A quick sidebar, I can't help myself. There's no textual evidence for this, but I love to imagine Jesus, very early, when it's still dark, rising from the dead by himself in that tomb and looking at the kind of the linen wrappings that wrapped him up and thinking, well, those won't do at all, and kind of pushing them off to the side, marching out of the tomb across the garden only to find a gardener's robe hanging on a clothesline next door and kind of grabbing that to cover himself up. Not biblical, just my crazy imagination. So yes, maybe Jesus did look like the gardener, but maybe just maybe, the real truth is a bit deeper. Maybe resurrection looks ordinary. Maybe resurrection doesn't come wrapped in glory and trumpets and strings and undeniable certainty. Maybe resurrection comes as a quiet voice from a stranger, the familiar you didn't quite recognize. And that's exactly what happens with Mary. She doesn't see Jesus for who he is, not because she's blind, not because she doesn't believe, but because Mary is human and she's overwhelmed. She's still living in Good Friday, even though Easter morning has already begun. Love is already on the move. And so Jesus simply says her name, Mary. Time freezes. The noise inside her falls away. She sees that what was lost, who was lost, is right in front of her. Love, once buried, stands before her, alive again. Easter dawns on her Good Friday cage. It will be completely shocking to you to know that I belong to a gym, like an exercise place. I donate very charitable giver I am. I donate a lot. I don't use it very often, but when I do show up, I go swimming, but I also go to this group class, treadmills and weights and upbeat music, the type of thing you would expect of me, your priest. And there's this group trainer who kind of runs the class, and for better or for worse, somehow this person knows my name. I don't know how. During one of the early classes, I was lifting something. I was convinced I was totally crushing it, of course, when I heard from across the room, Sanford, drop your shoulders, engage your core. That form is not doing you any favors. So much for anonymity. I had been seen, and not in a good way. Being seen, being known, means that someone is watching. Someone is watching closely enough to know you and to know what needs adjusting. Jesus calls Mary by her name, not to embarrass her or to test her or to correct her, but Jesus calls her name to claim her. She's not just one more grieving person, she's Mary. She's his. And so are you. Grace doesn't stop with recognition, though. It moves. Grace transforms, not bringing just comfort, but actually calling us forth, commissioning us. Mary, for her part, upon realizing it's Jesus, seems ready to cling to this moment. I can just imagine her kind of throwing her arms around Jesus, never wanting to let go, holding him as tight for as long as possible until he says, Mary, you can't hold on to me. You've got to go. You've got to go. The good news is never meant to be held. It's meant to be shared. Mary came looking for a body, but now she leaves bearing a message. She becomes the apostle to the apostles. She wasn't just liberated from her cage of grief, she was transformed and sent. I have this friend, actually the same friend who I went shark diving with, and skydiving for that matter, and I haven't learned my lesson, but tragically, his mom died of cancer over a decade ago. And since then, his relationship with his dad has been strained, to say the least. His dad lives close by, but hasn't been supportive, especially around my friend's personal life. Recently, though, something has started to shift in their dynamic. His dad recently sheepishly admitted to his son that he has been spending a little bit of time with a particular woman. Nothing serious, he said, just dinner and company. The dad was nervous to tell his son. He was worried that his son would be upset with him. But my friend told him that there was nothing to worry about, Dad. It's great. Of course you want companionship. Of course you don't want to be lonely. Go have fun. And then my friend, bravely, in my opinion, said, but Dad, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? For years, you haven't really accepted or celebrated the idea of me finding companionship, but here you are, quietly hoping for the same thing. There was a pause. Much to my friend's surprise, his dad said, "You know, you're right. I've been selfish. I didn't understand it before, but I've kind of come to understand it because I've been so lonely since your mom died. And I realize now that you've been feeling the same way. We share that in common, and I'm sorry I haven't been as supportive of you in this way, and I want you to know that I'm trying to change." That's resurrection. That's resurrection right there. Not fireworks, not angels, just a quiet moment of turning, of recognition, of grace. And when grace moves, when we are seen, known, and changed, we are not meant to stay the same. We are sent. Jesus tells Mary not to cling, but to go. Not just in a moment of comfort, Jesus is calling her forward. In Jesus' resurrection, he doesn't just rise. He doesn't just call the ready or the righteous. He calls the grieving, the disoriented. He calls those of us who are stuck in Good Friday when Easter has already dawned. He calls Mary not to stay, but to go. Not to cling to the moment, but to carry the message. To be the proof. To be the proof. And in Mary's calling, Jesus reveals why resurrection is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new one. A new story for Mary. A new story for the disciples. A new story for you. So if you came here today thinking, it's just another Easter, just see you in 364 days, Groff, think again. This is your garden. This is your name being spoken. This is your new beginning. Christ is risen because Christ is here and Christ is calling you. Calling you out of the tombs that you've grown accustomed to, out of the cages that you didn't know you were in. Christ is calling you out beyond this place into a world that desperately needs resurrection. So go. Tell the others. Be the proof that love lives again. Alleluia. Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia.